Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we need more holy water. I think we're going to be okay. Welcome. Tonight we are going to talk about some Proverbs. Our slides are fewer. We have some handouts I want to look over. Not sure how long they're going to take, and the big game is tonight. So if we make it home in time for that, I'm not super upset about that either. But first, a few people took me up on my offer and wrote some psalms. Or had their spouse write them. We won't name names. A psalm of thanksgiving, declarative praise. Praise be to the risen Lord, who is victorious over death, and yet our loving shepherd who seeks for every lost lamb. I rejoice in the fact he will hear me and will supply the strength I require to fulfill his purpose for me. I ask him to guide me to a richer understanding of his law and promises. Praise be to my God. I claim his promise of strength and guidance to live my life in honor of him. Very good. I am like a seed planted in the vineyard, fed by the living water of the Spirit, nourished by your word which I am planted in. As I grow in the direction of your light, I am entwined with the body for guidance. In time, Lord, I shall bear the fruits of harvest. All that I am comes only from what you give me. I shall forever be planted in your vineyard, and to you all glory be given. Sheila went all out. We have a superscription where she shares with us some historic events that led to the writing of the inspiration. Back in January 2020, the north trunk of a split elm fell in their front yard, which allowed the view to open up. In March 2020, COVID changed her role at work, so she is now working from home. And because the tree fell, she has a very improved view of her meadow out of her window. She sees this as a providential divine blessing. Also, we could say an Ebenezer, right? God has helped me thus far. We also have a hymn to sing this by. I tried to do this and I couldn't get the beats down, so you will not, Sheila, I will not butcher your psalm, but it very cool. So we have a hymn that if we wanted to get into it. But here is her declarative praise. Oh, how lovely is the elm tree, waving arms as if to hug me. Yahweh holds me, he is there for me. Branches beckon me to trust him. God is faithful, always faithful. Birds call out, my Ebenezer, he is sovereign, God is mighty. And then she ends with a refrain, Diu ta panta, God is my everything. Wow. And this last one is an excellent segue into our Proverbs tonight. The woman who glorifies God morning, noon, and night calls forth blessings upon her loved ones and creates a haven of worship in her home. So we will explore Psalm 31 a little more this evening, and I felt like this, Proverbs 31, and this psalm leads us right into that discussion. So thank you, everyone. This was very cool. So, Book of Proverbs. Yay. Remind ourselves a little bit about what it is we're doing here. Wisdom literature and the difference between our ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature and our Hebrew wisdom literature. Yes, everyone, there's 2 handouts plus the PowerPoint packet, so there are 3 things you need tonight. If you don't have them, now's a good time to get them. So the big difference is that Hebrew wisdom literature includes Israelite religion components. So the priests, the law givers, made the will of God known on the basis of the Mosaic law. The prophets declared God's will through direct oracles or dreams. The wise, the sages, related the law to the requirements and problems of everyday life. So we learn in Proverbs 1:7 that wisdom begins with fearing the Lord, with fearing Yahweh. And we can understand fearing in the same way that we use the word today, to be afraid, and to be in awe, to revere. I think we should be afraid a little bit of God because he is God. And I don't really mind the buddy picture, flannel graph Jesus, except I think it loses a little bit of the fear. Anyway, so I think all the elements, nuances of fear are fitting in our description tonight. So religious devotion, I think within wisdom literature, religious devotion includes covenantal obligations, and how we live our life is just what we owe our Creator, right? Nothing is ours. What is striking is we don't have explicit references to the law, like obey this commandment and you will live. It's just this general vibe that to really be wise, to really live the fullest life, you are doing all of the above. You are incorporating your covenantal obligations. You are living as the priests tell you to live. You are heeding the prophet's message. You are applying this to your everyday life. So, what is a proverb? One scholar described it as a winged word, which I think is kind of cool. It outlives the fleeting moment. The Hebrew word is mashal, and Hebrew is super fun because it takes the 3 letters, the M, the SH, the L, that's your root, switches around vowels, and you can have every part of speech you want. So either Hebrew is great because it all looks the same, or Hebrew is great because it all looks the same. Anyway, we can have 2 meanings, 2 definitions of mashal, which I think apply to what a proverb is as well. So mashal could mean to be like, a similitude, the analogy basically that lies at every heart of a proverb. But also mashal can mean to rule. And so it becomes a powerful word, a word that leads to exemplary character. So I think it's not an accident that this verb, change a couple of the vowels and we now have the noun. The meaning of the verb reflects its noun aspects, which I think encompass what a proverb is, even what we say in English, how we even understand it in English. So a proverb is a short, pithy maxim or saying. It is short and it's pithy and it's memorable because it needs to be short, pithy, and memorable so that you can memorize it and apply it to your life. And it encapsulates truths and observations that are experienced. So it's not just head knowledge. It's just not being super smart. You need to live out these proverbs. So they need to be worded in a way that will make it easy to strive for whatever it is that they're asking us to do. So, some guiding principles, I think, when we think about the book of Proverbs as a unit, as a whole. And this is also kind of wisdom literature generally as well. We don't see this, I think, in the same way in Psalms, and maybe because it's more poetic. I'm not sure. But definitely in the book of Proverbs, there is a understanding that there's a fundamental order hidden within the universe. This is what God did at creation. He beat back chaos and brought order, right? And there was, we'll just read it. There was not nothing. The Vulgate adds that later. But anyway, right? The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, and a wind swept over the face of the waters. So there's something there, but it's not ordered, it's not structured. And what God does is bring order to this chaos. So always the Old Testament worldview is water is chaos, monsters live in the water, Leviathan, Rahav, not Rahab, another monster spelled the same way. Anyway, water, the sea is chaos. So notice the Israelites do not go sea exploring, right? They stay on their land because the water is scary. And the first few things God does is he brings light and he separates the land from the water and he starts to create borders and structures and he's bringing order to this chaos. And this is just how we know that there's a God at all, that there is an order to the chaos. So it is in humanity's best interest to act in harmony with this order. If you are a menace, if you are a lawbreaker, if you are doing things that is bringing about chaos, there are going to be repercussions. So either your conduct, how you live, strengthens the existing order that God created so that you are promoting God's way of things, or you are threatening its survival, the order's survival, which is going to probably lead to some kind of punishment. So it is our task as humanity to discover how we're going to go. Are we going to go the way where we promote order, or are we going to go the way that we promote chaos? Now, it's easy to sit and say, well, of course, we're going to go the way of order. But to actually live that out, this is the trickier part. How? How do you go about promoting God's order versus chaos? This is where knowledge and wisdom come in the mix. This is how you determine your best course of action, especially when both decisions seem fine. Right? I mean, it's murder, don't murder. Right? Those are pretty extreme, pretty clear. Okay, I probably shouldn't murder. But what about this job over that job? Right? Where either decision is not going to bring life or death to anybody, but how do you know which is the better way? So this is where the wisdom literature comes in and says wisdom and knowledge are the way to determine. And if you have correct knowledge, this becomes the tricky part. If you have the correct knowledge that you're supposed to have, then you will be shown divine favor. This is where we lose it a little bit as post-Easter believers. But remember, we're in the Old Testament, where if you obey the Mosaic covenant, you will be blessed. If you disobey, you will be cursed. You'll be sent into exile. The Philistines will steal the ark. The plague or the famine will come, right? They very clearly saw behaviors and then the repercussion of those behaviors as a response to sin, not sin, God's favor. This rolls into our discussion next week in Job, where Job pushes back and says, I'm an innocent man, and yet I'm going through all this. So it seems to be, it's interesting. Remember in our first week, we talked about how we kind of need to read all of our texts together, well, with an eye to each other. So Proverbs seems pretty cut and dry. You walk the way of the wise, you will be blessed. Except we oftentimes see the wicked flourishing. And then we swing to next week and says, we have a very blessed man, if you read the prologue, which we will, and see of all the things that Job has and does. And then for no reason at all, God says, Hasatan, knock yourself out. And the friends go, "Whoa, you must have sinned, Job. This is not in our worldview. There's no way that an innocent man walking the way of the wise would be treated like this." And yet, spoiler alert, we'll get to the end of the book, and yes, this is the way things go down, because God is God. Anyway, so when we look at our cut and dried Proverbs today, we're going to need to remember it's kind of narrow, and we're going to need to keep it in the context of everything else. But anyway, a guiding principle to begin with is we have two ways of life. I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, and our goal is to figure out which way to live, and the Proverbs will help us figure out which way to live. So, at the heart of the wisest search for knowledge, we want to be wise, we don't want to be fools, lays the understanding that life is the supreme good. I think sometimes this gets lost, this idea that we want to be blessed. We want robust health. We want an abundance of friends. We want a house full of children. We want sufficient possessions to take care of ourselves. But then Job, really, we probably should have done it at the same time. We don't have enough time. Anyway, this is going to be a two-parter. You have to tune in next week. Job says, well, I had all that and I lost all that. So we need both Proverbs and Job to kind of balance the scale a little bit. So in general, I can say the book of Proverbs is a collection of analogies, contrastive, comparative, which will achieve correct knowledge, which will ultimately help determine how one should live. So we could say Job is following Proverbs to the T, and it still doesn't seem to matter. But that's going to be a cliffhanger. So these two pilgrims, we're pilgrims on the path of life. There's two types, yep. The wise and the foolish. The wise are righteous. The wise are anyone who strengthens God's order. They're obedient to their parents. This is talked about a lot in the book of Proverbs. They show self-control. Examples, controlling the tongue is a big one. How you talk, when you talk, if you talk, what you say, what you don't say. Subordinating your passions. Not letting the fleshly side of you, Paul would say, take control. Generosity, acts of kindness. We have some scripture references there. So these would all be people who would be considered wise. The other side to the coin is the foolish. They are called wicked. They are anyone who undermines harmony. Their behaviors lead to destruction. Much is talked about being lured by the adulteress or being lured by the prostitute. Remember, the wise person can control their passions. So the opposite is a fool who can't and is lured by these women. Drunkenness, laziness, gossip, pretty much the complete opposite. The complete opposite of wisdom is foolishness. And there is a lot of discussion of this. And it seems that there is no middle ground. You're either wise or foolish. We do have some general conclusions, but it becomes almost idealistic in the way. No one is 100% wise and no one is 100% fool. But this is how they present their ideal, I think, of what Israelites should look like. So last week I mentioned our sad, lame English Bibles just keep using fool, when in reality there are many types of fools in the Hebrew. There's even more than these words, but these are the ones found in Proverbs. And I think this really changes some of the nuances. So break out your concordance or go to like BibleHub.com if you don't actually own a concordance, and make sure we're understanding which fool is being talked about in any given verse. So the petty is the naive, untutored individual. We might say ignorant in the sense of unknowing, right? Sometimes today we'll use ignorant as kind of a slam or a slur, but in reality it just means, it's a Greek word, it just means unknowing. Kessel is one who is innately stupid. There is no, it is what it is. So in Psalm 122, my NRSV, all right, my bad, I'll take it one step back. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing? So they do attempt to have two different words here to accommodate our Hebrew. How long, petty, will you love being simple? How long will Kessel hate knowledge? I don't know what I was looking at. That sometimes might just have fool. Another fool word, okay. So the W in Hebrew can either be pronounced like a V or a W. The W sounds very dumb to me. But when I say evil, I don't mean evil. Okay? I mean the Hebrew word evil just sounds like I have a speech impediment. So anyway, I cannot. It's a vav, it's not a wah. Anyway, doesn't matter. Evil, the Hebrew evil, is a person characterized by obstinacy. And evil despises a parent's instruction. I want to see what we've got here in our English. Yeah, every teenager, right. We could just, yes. So 15:5, a fool despises a parent's instruction. But we don't, right? The obstinate part doesn't quite come through in our English with the fool. So an obstinate person despises a parent's instruction. Ba'ar is someone who is a crude individual. Those who hate to be rebuked are Ba'ar. Those who hate to be rebuked are stupid, the NRSV says. So, crude, stupid, I don't know if that's a really good translation. And then Naval is a brutal, depraved person. We're kind of like on a scale here, on a little bit of a continuum. The one who begets a Kessel, the one who is innately stupid, gets trouble. The parent of a Naval has no joy. So twice now we've had parent-children telling you this is a huge theme in the book of Proverbs. So in 1721, again, two different fool words. The one who begets a fool gets trouble. The parent of a fool has no joy. So if we were looking at our parallelism, we might say that this might be synonymous parallelism, but in Hebrew it's not, because we have two different words for fool. The one who is innately stupid gets trouble, but the one who is brutal or depraved has no joy. I think about the mothers of those criminals the career criminals. Anyway, so all this to say, when we're, yes, are we talking about depraved criminals? Go.
Well, Nabal,
No, yes.
who was married to Abigail. How
Oh,
does that fit the description?
that's a hard name to name someone. That's a bummer. Yeah, so this is just the noun. Remind me, what does he do? Does he live up to his name?
Well, I don't know how that's brutal.
Oh.
The description in well, what is that, Samuel?
Yeah. What?
I don't know how this description fits him.
Is he depraved? I can't remember the story.
Oh, well, David watched over his flock so that no thieves would come during the year.
Okay.
And during sheep shearing time, that he wanted to be paid for that, and Nabal said no.
So the Nabal Abigail story, it does sound up. He kind of lives up to his name, but to name a baby this was kind of harsh. So
Did names come later sometimes?
not into adulthood.
No, it said that he was a servant man. It said he was rude.
Well, then it was fitting. Maybe this was a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're going to name me this, that's right. I'm going to end up being this type of person. So I would be interested in looking and making sure the spelling is the exact same way, but the pronunciation sounds awfully alike. We do, what also gets super fun in Hebrew is that the vowels come hundreds of years after the text is written. So if later, okay, now I gotta look this up. Someone make a note. But is it the Hebrew vowels are the same?
Looks like it. It says he was a wealthy criminal life that the Lord chose for his people to tell David. David married Abigail, the widow.
Okay, because we have two different A's in Hebrew. Just because, why not? This whole language. I took this in seminary, and I said, why? Greek. I'm going to stick with the Greek.
It's like reading a license plate on a car. You just have to figure it out.
Like reading a license plate. What clue is that? The game you play while you're driving and you're supposed to be paying attention to the road? Yes. Well, yes. So unpointed, I've never been, but aren't like the signs there? They don't have the vowels. They're just and they know what it says. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, it wasn't until this has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but about the vowels weren't added to like 1000 CE. So it, which strengthens, I think, the argument of it being an oral tradition that's passed down. But
This Bible has, the subscript says that the name is
so that they are the same word. So I just want to follow up one, because this is why I do biblical studies. This right here has nothing to do with anything, but it sure is interesting. Anyway, is it the exact same word? And then if it is, yeah, I mean, it would be ironic if he was a nice man with that kind of name. So,
text also points out that he was named that. He was named that because he was that.
so now we're back to a later naming where his personality is, I don't know the naming tradition, how old you have to be, but man, if you're a toddler that's already reflecting these personality traits, poor Abigail. Anyway, all this to say, when we are reading through and we have our fool word, I would encourage you. There are online resources where you can double check and see which version of fool, because it does sometimes, I think, impact a little bit. Yes, churlish is another translation. So it might change a little bit of the feel of the proverb if we just use another word besides fool. A good interlinear is good to have, have too. Random story. So in my seminary days, I was in the 1 Corinthians class and we needed to do it from the Greek, and my professor has his Bible up and it looks just like mine, and he's just reading the text. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be him. I just want to look at the Greek and just read it fluent. English on one side, Greek on the other. And I was kind of crushed after I realized that he wasn't cheating, but anyway, I cannot do this to this day, but he was so cool. He's still cool. But he was really cool, and then he was less cool after I realized that he had the help. So anyway, all this to say, a good interlinear is helpful when we're not super strong in our biblical languages to see these different things that are coming up that we're losing in translation. Just like we talked about last week with our Psalms, the structure of the Proverbs are parallelism, especially when we get to the second collection, which we will talk about. The three main types we see in the book of Proverbs are the contrastive or antithetical, where we are juxtaposing opposites. Synonymous, of course, is enforcing an astute observation by repetition with different words. Progressive, the second line will build upon the idea of the first line. So some examples. An antithetical parallelism we see in Proverbs 11:1. A false balance, like the scale, is an abomination to Yahweh, but an accurate weight is his delight. So we have our contrastive conjunction but here to see that the second line is the opposite to the first line. Synonymous parallelism in Proverbs 1:8-9. Hear, my child, your father's instruction, and do not reject your mother's teaching, for they are a fair garland for your head and pendants for your neck. So I think we have two sets of bicolons. Hear, my child, your father's instructions, and do not reject your mother's teaching. And then another set. They are a fair garland for your head and pendants for your neck. So two ways of saying the same thing. Progressive, we see in Proverbs 4:7. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. We could just really stop right there. It really says it all. There's nothing more really to say. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. And whatever else you get insight. These are the two most important things. Nothing else matters. If you have this, everything else will sort itself out. So progressing the idea from wisdom into insight, the second line kind of builds on the first line. We talked about these in are we a slide behind? Has it been moving with me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Like 10 seconds, but not this long.
Okay, well, I just keep moving. Okay, we talked about these on the first night as an overall, but I want to remind ourselves, we see what are called excluding proverbs or better sayings, where a proverb sets one reality in complete opposition to another. But rather than determining which is better between good things, an excluding proverb declares one is good and its opposite is bad. So there's no question. It's very clear. Better is a dinner of vegetables where love is than a fatted ox and hatred with it. So vegetables versus fatted ox. I'd go with the fatted ox personally. Love versus hatred. I'm going on a diet next week. I'm living large this week. It's going to be awesome. Never mind. I mean, it's true, but I will not digress further. So, better is than that, and it's real clear. It's not wishy-washy at all. We also have numerical, or numerical, if you want to scratch out the B, because that is misspelled. Numerical proverbs. We can have them with numerical heightening. We can have them without. So this is kind of interesting. So Proverbs 30, notice these are both in chapter 30. Proverbs 30, 24 through 28, we do not have a progression of importance. They're just all equally there. 4 things on earth are small, yet they are exceedingly wise. So there are 4 equal ideas. The ants are people without strength, yet they provide their food in the summer. The badgers are a people without power, yet they make their homes in the rocks. The locusts have no king, yet all of them march in rank. The lizard can be grasped in the hand, yet it is found in kings' palaces. So fun, so weird. What is this? I don't know. Anyway, so the ants, the badgers, the locusts, and the lizard are all equally important in their own ways. But then we might have numerical heightening, where the last thing will be the most important. And 3 things are stately in their stride, 4 are stately in their gait. The lion, which is the mightiest among wild animals and does not turn back before any. The strutting rooster, the he-goat, and a king striding before his people. So, which is the most important, the lion or the king? Do you read this, the first 3 and then the 4th? Or, anyway, this is interesting. I'm not sure. 4 are stately in their gait. 3 things are stately in their stride. And we have a lot to say about the lion, and the rooster, the he-goat, and the king are kind of grouped together. Find this interesting. Or, just because he's a king, he's the most important compared to, but I don't know, I'm kind of hung up on the fact that we have 2 whole lines for the lion. So I don't know if this is putting the king in his place to the same level as a rooster and a he-goat. I don't know. I was struck by this one. Okay, so those are some things, some structural things that we would see as we read through, as we are striving to understand our texts. From superscriptions, like we saw with the Psalms, we have some headings of our collections in the Proverbs. So 1 through 9 seem to be a collection. And if you flip in your Bibles, you will see that the first verse of chapter 1 is the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. This is our little superscription, if you will. Then when we get to 10, verse 1, we're told that these are the Proverbs of Solomon. So it seems that chapters 1 through 9 are a collection that are meant to go together. 10:1 through 22:16 are the Proverbs of Solomon. But in 17, we see that these are just sayings or words of the wise. And what most scholars think is these are not Israelite, that they've been borrowed, right? We have Egyptians and Mesopotamians and other wisdom literature. We'll have a comparison here in a little bit. That they have absorbed proverbs from other cultures, which was the whole point of night 1. We are not being written in a vacuum. We incorporate Yahweh and the Israelite religion, but we're going to see that there are, and maybe it's because of its general nature, and it is kind of the secular ideas, if you will. It doesn't really rely on religion. But what people think when we have these sayings of the wise, and then in 24:23, more sayings of the wise, we find these texts in other cultures, not just in our Hebrew Bible.
Couldn't this also be just point out the commonality of
Yes.
human beings?
The commonality of human beings, the general, if you make good decisions, you're probably going to be living in okay, you know what I mean? So, yes, this we're not being written in a vacuum, but we are being influenced, not in a negative way, but this is human nature is human nature regardless of where you live, and so that could very much be what's going on here too. I do just find it striking that they were very willing to incorporate it into their holy text, but that might be a discussion for another class. We see in 25:1, we have more Proverbs. It's supposed to be more Proverbs of Solomon transcribed by the men of Hezekiah. We in 30:1-14, we have sons of Agur, who is the son of Jakeh from Massa. We're not sure exactly what Massa is. It's not an Israeli town. We know that Ishmael had a son named Massa. So whether this has some connection, again, some non-Israelite sayings incorporated, could be. We're not sure we don't know where Massa is. We don't know what it's referring to. Some wonder if it's another reference to these general sayings that don't necessarily need to be just Israelite sayings. In 30:15-33, we don't have any superscriptions. We don't know who wrote them, where they came from. In 31:1-9 are the sayings of Lemuel, king of Massa. We have this Massa again, which his mother taught him. So now the queen is teaching her son the ways he should go. And 10-31, we have no superscription, but we have these units. So we're going to look at these a little more closely. The first collection, chapters 1-9, we do not really have Proverbs or aphorisms, the two-line sayings. We have discourse, short poems that are linked together by saying. So 1:10-19, 6:20-35, 9:13-18 could be kind of these poems. And not surprisingly, we have rhetorical questions, metaphors, vivid descriptions, anecdotes, allegories, all of the different figures of speech we talked about last week. All of these can be incorporated into our poems that we see here. So we start off in chapter 1:1-6, with descriptions of wisdom. For learning about wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for gaining instruction in wise dealing, righteousness, justice, and equity, to teach shrewdness to the simple, knowledge and prudence to the young. Let the wise also hear and gain in learning, and the discerning acquire skill, to understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. So we have like these aspects: instruction, insight, shrewdness, knowledge, prudence, learning, discernment, understanding. I have that twice. And then the motto, the slogan of this first collection, verse 7. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So this is the heart, the crux of the matter. We start with Yahweh and go out from there. We very much it just, is a little nerve-wracking, right? The heart just clutches a little bit because you're just not sure it's going to pull through this time. I don't want to touch it because we might mess it up. Oh. I don't know. I don't know what to jiggle. And the minute, oh my gosh, my blood pressure is going through the roof. Well, you know, last week went great. Could we ask for 2 in a row? Okay, I'm gonna touch it. Well, it's 2 slides. I don't know if it's if it's the chart that's the problem.
That's next slide.
Just kinda hangs there, then it has been clearing on the other times.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna jump just to have it, but go back to the chart that I now can't see. So never mind, I gotta go back 2 slides. Okay, so we are talking about whatever slide 20 is, the pedagogical function, the 10 lectures, even though it's not on the screen, whatever. So what we see is that this are fathers and mothers teaching their sons the way to fear Yahweh, the way to walk the wise, righteous path. And we have some interludes interspersed throughout, which is kind of fun. So in verses 8 through 19, who you hang out with becomes an important threat, right? You usually will end up acting more like who you hang out with than you changing them to have them act like you. So we have some teaching over the perils of the seductive gang, the gang that's going to suck you in, seduce you into living their way of life. In 20 and 23, we have a little interlude. Wisdom cries out in the street. In the square, she raises her voice. At the busiest corner, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gate, how long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing? This was the petty versus the Kessel. Give heed to my reproof. So wisdom condemns the fools. In 2:1, for the rest of chapter 1 is the personification of wisdom. And then in 2:1, we switch back to the teaching, my child, if you accept my words and treasure up my commandments within you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding, if you seek, then, verse 5, you will understand the fear of Yahweh and find the knowledge of God. So we're back to our parental lecture in 1 through 22, and the description of the path to wisdom. And in chapter 3, my child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. And we have the teaching on the wisdom of piety. We interrupt our scheduled programming in verse 13 to have wisdom being praised. Happy are those who find wisdom. I do not like this translation. The Beatitudes, you're blessed. You're not happy. This is the blessed word. You just scratch it out. Scratch it out in your Bibles, write in blessed. Blessed are those who find wisdom and those who get understanding, for her income is better than silver and her revenue better than gold. So we see that verses 13 through 20, we have a praise of wisdom, the personification. In 21, again, my child, do not let these escape from your sight. So we go back. We are taught how to win favor with both God and man. In the beginning of chapter 4, the son is called to love wisdom and hate evil. In verses 10 through 19 of chapter 4, we have the right path described for us. When you walk the right path, your step will not be hampered. If you run, you will not stumble. We have the straight path described after the right path at the end of chapter 4. And then, because this is most likely a teenage son, I mean, maybe this is teaching for young boys, but we have to talk about the promiscuous woman. We have to talk about moving into adulthood and being on our own. And chapter 5, we have the description of how dangerous the promiscuous woman can be. We have 4 epigrams in 6, 1 through 19. Sounding a little more like Proverbs. Give your eyes no sleep and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. These little shorter 4-verse, 5-verse little bit of sayings. And then for the rest of chapter 6 and chapter 7, we're back to the promiscuous woman. So if we count the number of verses and just look at it ratio-wise, the teaching of the son and the adulterous promiscuous woman outweigh all other kind of teachings, which I think just goes to show how important, or important in the sense of this was a big issue, and we need to make sure that we are not led astray. We have another interlude where wisdom praises herself in chapter 8, and then we conclude with the wisdom and folly are inviting you in chapter 9. And now you have 8 chapters of learning, and now you're posed with your choice in chapter 9. Which way are you going to go? So we see 2 corrective insights that the parents of the child, the son, give. Unaided human intellect cannot arrive at true wisdom. Wisdom is grounded in fearing Yahweh, which includes obeying Torah and being in covenantal relationship with Yahweh. So even though we haven't had super explicit references to the law, to Torah, it's implied. It's in the air when we are talking about these things. So true insight is what comes from God himself. You need to be in relationship with God, fearing God in order to receive this insight. We have we can finish up, this will be a good stopping point. But first night, we had the question about the personification of wisdom, and we have both wisdom and folly personified as women. They are calling out from the city gates. They are calling out from their doorways, come into my feast. Both of them are kind of wooing the people walking by. Come to my banquet, come into my house. Folly lurks in the night, but so does wisdom a little bit. I think what we are seeing is that, we talked about on our first night that wisdom was created, the Chokmah was created by God, and then we read quite a few passages where wisdom helps God in creation. When wisdom calls out to people, she wants to form a relationship with them. I think what we're seeing is the personification of God, if you will, his presence among the people. Wisdom is here. I am a creation of God. I am a part of God. And now if you call and hear my voice and respond appropriately, it is like you are in God's presence. Wisdom is sharing God's message to his people. And we might even go so far to say that we can equate wisdom to the Holy Spirit in maybe what we see as an advocate, right? Jesus says he has to leave in order for the Holy Spirit to come, be our comforter and our advocate. So maybe we have a similar type of role in the Old Testament of wisdom, and especially in wisdom literature, calling you, leading you, come this way, don't go over there, come over here, don't listen to her, come over here. Maybe it's functioning in the same way, and it's this presence among the people where we don't, it's hard to relate to a faraway God. But we also have a personification of folly or stupidity or foolishness, depending on your translation. So in Proverbs 9:13 through 18, the foolish woman is loud. She is ignorant, knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house on a seat at the high places of the town, calling on those who pass by. You who are simple, petty, turn in here. And to those without sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But they do not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. So again, you have a choice. You have two ladies that are calling out to you, and they both seem very inviting. So which voice will you heed? Will you be enticed by moral misfits? Will you follow evil companions that lead to destruction, that seductive gang? Then you are heeding the voice of folly. Or will you heed the voice of wisdom? Will you experience wisdom as if God was among you? To those who repent, they will be blessed. And to those who seek wisdom, they are secure, 133 says. So we want to avoid evil. We want to have complete trust in God. We want to diligently prepare for the future. We want to avoid sexual sins. We want to choose that, the path of wisdom, heeding her voice over against folly's voice. All right, so that was our first collection, chapters 1 through 9. I think this is a good time to break. Let's take about a 10-minute break, and we will pick up in chapter 10. Can online hear me? All right, very good. I think we are ready to go. Are we almost all the way back? In our second collection, we have chapters 10 through 22, 16. We have two big sections, and here is where we see our typical two-lined aphorism. The first section really prefers the antithetical opposite parallelism, which is interesting.
Ben Franklin's inspiration.
Okay. All right, so some themes that we see in this second collection. Attributes of God. God is creator. God controls all things. God is wise. God is just. God rewards the diligent. Financial success. We also have some general themes. The rewards of the righteous and the end of the ungodly, the lazy versus the industrious, justice, neighborliness, riches and poverty, family life. These are all themes that we will see in these sections, in the second section. In our third collection, our format is more discursive. Rambling, jumping from one topic to another. Very hard to create any kind of context within, what's coming before and after a verse. And rarely parallelism is used. We're just saying things that are needing to be said. What we do see, though, is chapters 22 and 23 have similarities with the wisdom of Amenemopeh, which is one of your handouts that was emailed to you or out on the table. And so I just find this really striking. I mean, this is not an accident. We're seeming to be borrowing from this Egyptian text. Proverbs 22:17 through 18, incline thine ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your heart to my doctrine, for it is pleasant if you keep them in your belly, that they may be established together upon your lips. Give your ear and hear what I say, Amenemopeh says, and apply your heart to apprehend. It is good for you to place them in your heart. Let them rest in the casket of your belly. That's a fun little image. That they may act as a peg upon your tongue. So we have the heart and the belly, inclining your ear. I mean, this is clearly, these are proverbs that, if not straight, are heavily influenced by Egypt. And remember, Amenemopeh is the king who is teaching his prince son how to be a good ruler. Remember, for Egyptian wisdom literature, the main context was not religious, but the royal court. How to be a good king, how to be a good prince, how to be a good courtier. Israel brings in the religious elements of it. Proverbs 22:22, rob not the poor, for he is poor. Get it? Neither oppress or crush the lowly at the gate. And in chapter 2, Amenemopeh says, beware of robbing the poor and oppressing the afflicted. Proverbs, I'm jumping around. Proverbs 22:29, halfway down on the page. You see a man quick in his work, Before kings will he stand, before cravens he will not stand. A scribe who is skillful in his business finds worthy to be a courtier. So here again, this context of the king. So I just thought it would be interesting. Flip your page over, Proverbs 23:10. Remove not the widow's landmark. Pretty sure that's supposed to be an apostrophe S. What happened? What happened to the apostrophe? Why does no one use it anymore? This bothers me. Remove not the widow's landmark and enter not. It does not make something plural, right? Ugh, anyway, whatever. Remove not the widow's landmark and enter not into the field of the fatherless. Moped chapter 6 says, remove not the landmark from the bounds of the field and violate not the widow's boundary. So social justice. But again, this language, widow's landmark, widow's boundary, thinking of the boundary of the field. So it does, to me, seem very likely that we have absorbed, we being Hebrew wisdom literature, have absorbed other cultures' texts. But again, all of this are good things to do. You should be kind to the widows and the orphans, and don't rob the poor. They don't have anything. Shoot for the rich. I mean, to be a little Robin Hood if you need to be. So we see in this third collection some texts that we are seeing in other cultures as well. In our fourth collection, we have extended sayings, impartiality and judgment, the problem with false testimony and sloth. So if we flip over to chapter 24, so verses 3 through 7, or 8 and 9, or 10 through 12. So we're moved past the aphorisms and we need a little more lines to get what we need to say. In verse 17, do not, we need to jump to 23. These are the sayings of the wise. Partiality in judging is not good. Whoever says to the wicked, you are innocent, will be cursed by peoples, abhorred by nations. But those who rebuke the wicked will have delight, and a good blessing will come upon them. One who gives an honest answer gives a kiss on the lips. So we have 3 and a half verses to get the whole idea across versus just 2 lines. Our fifth collection is chapters 25 and 29. Again, we're back to our antithetical parallelism. Interestingly, the subject of the king and proper royal court life comes up. The proper conduct between a king and his subjects. The lazy man is described, and the mischief maker is described as the foil of who not to be, right? Our antithetical parallelism. So the lazy man does this, but you need to do this. So, because of the nature of Proverbs, it's hard to outline. Potential is a key word on this slide. Here's a potential thematic outline of chapters 10 through 29. Broad, general strokes here. Chapters 10 through 13, we have discussion of the righteous versus wickedness. We kind of have this all over the place, but it hits heavy in chapters 10 and 15. Yahweh and the king are discussed in chapters 16 through 22. Nature and agriculture examples permeate chapters 25 and 27, and teachings for the king or potential rulers in chapters 28 through 29. So, but this is, if you're choosing passages for a sermon, Proverbs, stick with a couple. Or what we will see at the end, a topical view, the different ways Proverbs talks about one topic. But to hit a chunk or a chapter, you can't really do it in the same way. Our sixth collection is chapters 30, verses 1 through 14. A dialogue between a skeptic and a believer. So this is interesting. We, again, are kind of moving away from the aphorisms. These are the words of Agar. Thus says the man, I am weary, O God, I am weary, O God, how can I prevail? So at the beginning of verse 4, the skeptic asks, who has ascended to heaven and come down? Who has gathered the wind in the hollow of the hand? Who has wrapped up the waters in a garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is that person's name? And what is the name of the person's child? Surely you know. And the answer in verse 5 is by the believer. Every word of God proves true. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him. Do not add to his words, or else he will rebuke you, and you will be found a liar. So this chapter 30 is interesting, the discussion between the skeptic and the believer, which will lead us into our discussion of Job next week as we have his friends come, and we have these long speeches, and then we will have Job's response, and they go back and forth. So the bulk of Job is this dialogue between a friend and him, and they have very clear opinions about why this is happening to Job. And Job has pretty clear responses that it's not his fault. In the second half of chapter 30, our seventh collection, we see these numerical sayings that we saw earlier. And really, the theme is the humility of the wise in the presence of an all-wise God. This ends up being the upshot to Job. Job's response, or God's response to Job at the end was, where were you when I made everything? And Job has no response. This happens twice. So you need to put yourself in your right place, Job, when thinking, because he ends up kind of railing against God. He's very upset, and God puts him in his place. So the second half of chapter 30, we kind of have this vibe that we will see next week as well. The beginning of chapter 31 is an oracle of the queen, the king's mother, and what taught him. And we see she provides teaching on the proper conduct for kings, the importance, the role of sexual relations, peril of intoxication, but also social justice. Speak out for those who cannot speak, for the rights of all the destitute. This is what a good king should do. Speak out, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So she's a good matronly queen, teaching her kingly son how to be a good king. And then we come to our favorite section, the last half of Proverbs 31. We have another handout. Remember, we talked about it is an acrostic poem. So in your gray highlights, if you have the attachment on the email, it's probably highlighted yellow. But I have highlighted the first letter of each verse, which we start with our Hebrew aleph, our Hebrew A, and we work our way down the alphabet. What I also did was bolded the English word that correlates with the Hebrew word. And notice we completely lose the acrostic feel. Like it's not even the first word of the sentence, which I think is just kind of funny. So the Hebrew word, ishat, is the word for wife, a capable wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. Then we have batach. The heart of her husband trusts in her. Hebrew, the normal Hebrew, the sentence starts with a verb. So when it doesn't, you should wonder why. So the very first sentence starts with a noun. This is chapter 10. Verse 10 starts with a noun. And this should make you pause in all of your Hebrew knowledge, but this makes sense because the whole thing is about a capable wife. So we're going to change up a typical word order to draw our attention, and then we're going to see all the rest mainly be verbs. So the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with her willing hands. This is our D word. She is like the ships. She is. I should have really highlighted. She is. Like the ships of the merchant, she brings her food from far away. This is funny to me. So verse 15, that first letter is the word and or also. Super clever incorporating this in your acrostic. Ugh, these people, they crack me up. She also rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it with the fruit of her hands, and she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength, makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to her staff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand in verse 20. She is not afraid. So in verse 21, we have a conjunction, or a little preposition, a conjunction, an emphatic particle, negative particle. Anyway, verse 22, she makes herself coverings. Her husband is known in the city gates. She makes linen garments. Here is not the verb, it's the noun, so this is interesting. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Again, we've got a different word order in 25. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household. Her children rise up. Many women have done excellently. Charm is deceitful. Beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Here we go. This is chapter 31. We end where we started, fearing the Lord. Give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. So we see a picture written by a guy of the ideal Israelite wife. And I'm not saying that it is bad, but it is a lot. It would be really unlikely that women would be able to buy a field on their own. They just did not have that legal clout. But to have her husband trust her, to perceive that her merchandise is profitable, these are all things that probably could happen. I don't make linen garments, nor do I sell them. Nor do I give shopkeepers sashes just to give them sashes. But anyway, you get the gist of this ideal. But to use this and lord it over our wives, or use it to berate them because they don't achieve this ideal, I think is misusing this text. It is a nice poem that is structured creatively, and we in general should do this, but I think husbands should do some of these things too. I've had students in the past who their husbands have used this again. Well, if you were a Proverbs 30, like there's even the Proverbs 31 ministry. They probably have blogs now. Anyway, this makes me nervous because no one can meet this ideal. I mean, that's why it's an ideal. So take it for what it is, something to shoot for, but we will never achieve the ideal on our own or in this lifetime. So anyway, but I think seeing it, we lose a little bit in the translation. The ordering of the words changes, but I think it's clever. how they can make complete sentences and complete ideas in this acrostic format. So what is the purpose of the book of Proverbs? To provide a way to approach life based on experience and observation. I think this is our key words, experience and observations. This is real life. And we are seeking to uncover these underlying principles as a source of guidance on how to live. And through this, we're able to create this relationship between religion and everyday life. How to not just be Sunday morning believers, but how to live it out daily in our walk. And it starts with the fear of the Lord and the knowledge of God, what we see in Proverbs 1:7. But if we look at the book of Proverbs as a whole, and all the different, did we read the poem about the drunkard? Just a minute. We missed something. Oh no, this is so great. Yes, okay. So we're going to jump back a little bit to Proverbs 23. Proverbs 23, 19 through 35. We've got the time. We're going to read it all. Hear, my child, and be wise, and direct your mind in the way. Do not be among wine bibbers. We really have to bring that term back. Or among gluttonous eaters of meat. Okay, never mind. I'm a gluttonous eater, so just the wine bibbers. For the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe them with rags. Listen to your father who begot you, and do not despise your mother when she's old. Buy truth, do not sell it. By wisdom, instruction, and understanding, the father of the righteous will greatly rejoice. He who begets a wise son will be glad in him. Let your father and mother be glad. Let her who bore you rejoice. My child, give me your heart, and let your eyes observe my ways. For a prostitute is a deep pit, an adulteress is a narrow well. She lies in wait like a robber and increases the number of the faithless. Here we go. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaining? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? Those who linger late over wine. Those who keep trying mixed wines. Do not look at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smoothly. At the last, it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. Your eyes will see strange things, and your mind utter perverse things. You will be like one who lies down in the midst of the sea, like one who lies on the top of a mast. They struck me, you will say, but I was not hurt. They beat me, but I did not feel it. When shall I awake? I will seek another drink. Do not envy the wicked, nor desire to be with them, for their mind devises violence, and their lips talk of mischief. So we have this fun little poem of the drunkard kind of talking, and his fate. It looks great, but it will bite you like a serpent. You will have redness of eyes, and when you wake, all you will want to do is find another drink. So anyway, I think that's just kind of funny. But when thinking of the purpose, did I go too fast? We don't even have a chart here. Maybe it's like too many. I don't know. Anyway, okay. We jump to your purpose. We'll come to this quite next. Anyway, overall, right? Which way? There's two paths. the wicked, or the wise, the righteous, the folly versus the wicked. Which one are you going to follow? And here are all these sayings, discourses, teachings, poems that can help you choose which way you want to go. As always, we need to move into the New Testament as New Covenant post-Easter believers. And we have, I was a little surprised, we have quite a few Proverbs quoted or alluded to in the New Testament. So Proverbs 3:11, my son, do not reject the discipline of Yahweh or loathe his reproof. It's directly quoted in Hebrews chapter 12. 3:34, though he scoffs at the scoffers, yet he gives grace to the afflicted, we have alluded to in James and 1 Peter. Alluded to is more hints at versus a direct quotation. 10:12, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers up all transgressions. Alluded to in James 5:2 and 1 Peter 4:8. 11:31, if the righteous will be rewarded in the earth, how much more the wicked and the sinner, alluded to in 1 Peter 4. If you say we do not know this, does he not consider it who weighs the hearts? And does he not know it keeps your soul and will not render to a man according to his work? We read about this in Romans 2:6. 25:21, if your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat, and if he is thirsty, give him water to drink, quoted in Romans 12:20. Oh man, we got a chart. What I think is more interesting, I mean, the quotations are good. Then we need to ask, what's the New Testament context? Why are they pulling this? This is easier with our proverb because it's the more general application that then our New Testament author is using. But what I think is more interesting is a topical comparison, a concept, how it's presented in the book of Proverbs compared to how it's presented in the New Testament. So I took the topic of wealth as just an example. So for those online, you can see it. That's so nice for you. Okay, well, great. Anyway, here I generalize these passages on your behalf, not knowing how much time we would have. But in general, we have a sense that Proverbs talks about wealth in this way. Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit. Whoever gives to the poor will not want. Better is a poor man who walks in integrity. Better is a little with righteousness. He who hates bribes will live. A greedy man stirs up strife. Riches do not profit on the day of wrath. Whoever doesn't answer the call of the poor, he himself will not be answered. In the New Testament, I kind of had to pare this down because we have a lot of parables. But with just kind of maybe our keyword being money or something along those lines for the New Testament, right? No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and man. God should be capitalized. That really bothers me. But woe, oh my gosh. Woe to you, right in woe, it's wrong. Woe to you who are rich, you have received your consolation. We have the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, where the rich man received his good things on earth, and so now is receiving his just reward in heaven. The rich are not to be haughty, nor lay hope in the uncertainty of riches, but on God who provides richly. James speaks against, 2-3 times, against the corruption of the rich and favoritism and that kind of idea. And then, of course, in 1 Timothy, we have the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So as we look to the two, are they pretty similar? Is there anything that the New Testament versus the Old Testament hits on? Is it pretty much an even correlation? What do you think? What do you see? Or just what have passages I might not have picked? Is our New Testament concept of wealth and money pretty much aligned with Proverbs? Not that they would be opposites necessarily, but does it somehow have a different take, angle, nuance than the other? What do you think?
Makes me think to being content.
Both of them, or just one compared to the other?
Well, I think they're both saying that.
So both from our Old Testament and New Testament perspectives, being content with what we have is strongly promoted in our teaching, the wise way to go, if you will.
Proverbs is a little more straightforward.
We get our shoot from the hip, practical application, daily living kind of thing. I wondered if Proverbs hit up the social justice angle a little more, and maybe it's not a fair comparison because I really cherry picked, but in our New Testament when we talk about, the care of the widows and orphans or the care of those less than us, is it always in the discussion of money? And I don't think it necessarily is. So this might be something different. If you are wealthy in Proverbs, it is your job, which I think then brings in our the Ten Commandments and the old law, the social justice elements that we see. If you have more, you are expected to share and take care of, whereas, I could be wrong here. I'm just kind of thinking through this as we talk, but I think, the rich young man comes to Jesus, how do I get to heaven? And Lazarus, I guess it is kind of coordinated with the wealth too. It just seemed to me as I was working through this, Proverbs hits on the social justice more often than I was seeing with some of these specific verses on money. But maybe not. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. So I don't know. But I just find this kind of interesting. We do need to think of ourselves. We have our new covenant lens, which sometimes makes it hard for us to read our Old Testament without it. Not that we should, but if we're going to try to grasp the text as they would have understood it, we kind of have to, if we can, take it off a little bit. So, but I think in general, we have pretty equal teachings, specifically on money and wealth in our Old Testament and New Testament, which is good. It levels the playing field, and we just get, we don't get conflicting ideas or anything. So, all right. So this was a brief introduction to the book of Proverbs. Any questions? I did look up the name of Abigail's husband, and the word for fool is spelled exactly the same way. So it is fitting that the churlish, mean man would be named that. I do feel bad for the boy, though. Yes. What's your question? Yeah.
But was, from the description of the story, was he brutish, and how was that described?
I don't want to move the thing.
Does that description fit the story about him?
I think that's what people were saying.
Well, I heard that.
Yes.
I didn't pick that up.
I don't know. All right, we've got time. Where does this happen?
1 Samuel 23, I think.
That's amazing. Did you look this up before? Do you just know that off the top of your head? Oh, no way. Close. 1 Samuel. Oh, we got 24. Abigail took 200. La, na, na, na. Okay, well, in 25, do not take seriously this ill-natured fellow Naval, for as his name is, so is he. That's just written right there in the text. It is Naval is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, do not see the young man of the Lord whom you sent. So then, here's our question, right? Folly and brutish to me are not the same thing. But yeah, so now I want to do a word study on folly to know if that's a really good translation of the, you know what I mean? This has become a bit of a thing. I'm making another note. So yes, on the one hand, it does seem, well, ill-natured and folly also don't. To be foolish doesn't mean you necessarily are ill-natured. You're just not wise.
Earlier in the story, described as surly
Okay.
and mean.
Yeah, which that would make the brutish side of things better. So yes, it does seem that he is well named. But now I wonder what came first, the name or his personality, and then he was named.
Just earned it.
Yeah, ugh. Anyway. And poor Abigail has to be a Proverbs 31 wife to this guy. That was a joke. Proverbs 31 wasn't written yet. Anyway. All right, very good. Good discussion. Next week, we will talk about Job. Brace yourself. It's a lot. Very good. Thank you very much. Drive safe. We will see you next week.